Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about some of the psychological benefits of maxing out regularly. We don't need to get into the physiology behind it right now, but I want to chat with you guys about both confidence and comfort, calmness. Because one of the things that we oftentimes note is that when a lot of guys approach a heavy lift, they approach it with fear, they approach it with anxiety, they approach it with a high degree of psychological arousal. And something that I would tell most of you guys, you probably need to be pretty calm when you do heavy lifts. I'm not saying a little psyching up isn't useful, but you should be relatively calm unless you're about to hit something in competition. So for me, I'm a big fan of calm maxing. And I think Matt Perryman, originally in his Squat Everyday book, talked about that quite a bit, and it's something he talked about later while getting his PhD, because again, he's someone who promotes hitting a max squat every day, or at least for periods of time. Whereas in my case, I rotate through different lifts. But I max out pretty much every day, right? Deloads and stuff aside, it's pretty much an everyday thing for me. Rotating upper and lower body lifts, rotating through different variations of my lifts. Right? I don't max out on the same lifts. Do different chain weights, bands, variations, block pulls, deficit pulls, right? Different stuff, floor presses. We max on different variations. My clients max on different variations. Now, when I talk about this, I'm not talking about novice lifters. Novice lifters don't need to max out. All right? They don't have the muscle mass. They don't have the technical proficiency, the body awareness, possibly not even the appropriate stabilizers and everything to max out. I'm talking about people with 6 months, 12 months of pretty hard, serious training who've learned the movement patterns. Most of my intermediate clients max out every week. All of my advanced clients max out every week. So the whole point here is that what it does is that it builds confidence and it removes anxiety when dealing with heavy lifts. And it's because it becomes your normal. And you want that. And when I talk about the low psychological arousal, let's come back over with where I was going with Matt Perryman. He had pointed out that there's data that suggests that even if you lift the same amount of weight, that the more aroused you are, the more it impacts your recovery. Okay, in other words, when you hit a 500-pound squat calmly at the same strength level versus if you really psych yourself up and scream and take a pre-workout and everything else and do the 500 squat, you recover slower from the ladder, even though the same weight was moved at the same bar speed. Beats recovery up more because there's a psychological component to recovery. So if we want to max out relatively regularly, we need to be calm. We need to be collect. Not saying we can't be focused. Not saying we can't dig in and get some aggression. Because realistically, to have 500 pounds on your back and squat, it's going to require a bit of focus and aggression. Unless you're insanely strong. But what we're talking about here is approaching it calmly. Then we come to the normalcy. Guys are afraid to max. They're afraid to miss lifts. They get fear of that weight. And some guys never get over that. There are competitive powerlifters who never get over anxiety of getting under a 1-rep max squat. It's something I chat with clients about and stuff. That fear of getting stapled. I mean, it's one thing with a deadlift, right? Guys aren't afraid to miss deadlifts as a general rule. Why? Well, unless they're afraid of hurting their back. The deadlift, you can just turn loose of the bar. It'll drop down, hit the ground. No big deal. With a squat, that weight's on top of you. And when you miss a squat correctly, the only way to go is straight down. Now, Olympic lifters and weightlifters have their own way of dealing with it, but for most of you, you're not in a weightlifting gym. You can't do what they do, so we're not even going to discuss that. And you probably don't want to do it in your own home with your own breakable stuff nearby. They just bail and drop the weight behind them. They'll also high bar squat, and they don't attempt a squat that gets grindy. They miss it, they just drop it behind them on the ground. But that's its own thing. But then again, they're used to doing that too, aren't they? And they're used to dropping weights all the time. Clean and jerk, snatches. They just drop them. They drop everything, including a back squat. But they're pretty chill about it. Kind of the same point, because max out all the time. Well, it's the same with all these lifts. When you max out all the time, it becomes not a big deal. It becomes not a big deal. When you do it regularly, it turns into just another lift. We lose that emotional connection to it. Same thing when you rotate lifts regularly. So this is why even my guys are like, well, what about you guys who don't have bands and chains? Well, everyone can get bands. But we do a lot of variations. Right? I can have guys box squat, back squat, pause squat, pin squat. I could even have some of them front squat, although that's not the norm. Most of my guys are not going to hit a max front squat. Deadlift, same stuff. We do a lot of deadlift variations. Benching. Normal grip, closed grip, floor plus. Closed grip, floor press, incline, overhead. Decline if you have the facilities. Do pen benches. All right, there's a lot you can do without accommodating resistance in different bars. If you got different bars, you got all that also. So have guys max. The more exercises that you max on, the less psychological attachment that you have to the max. Because what do we get attachment to? We get attachment oftentimes to a classic lift. Competition lift. Anything that's a competition lift, it's easy to develop an attachment to. What about a lift that you personally put a lot of value on? If you decide that the strict standing press is the most important lift to you, instead of just another lift, you'll develop a psychological attachment to it. And when you miss that lift, it's going to hit you harder. It's going to hit you harder in terms of confidence. It's going to hit you harder in terms of your psychology. Right? And when you miss that lift, you're going to be more inclined later to be more nervous next time you go to hit a max on that same lift, because you put a lot of value in it. When we max frequently and we max with different lifts, we lose the emotional attachment. Okay? Maxing out becomes your normal, right? And you can tell guys who don't max a lot. You can tell when they lift, you can tell when they do stuff, you can tell the way they approach stuff. It's very obvious when you see them max out. It's a very psyched up emotional thing for them. Because it has to be. Because they're not used to really straining against a maximum weight. They don't practice it. Or maybe they only max on one lift. When you max a couple times a week or more, it's just normal. It is no different. At that point, it becomes no different than coming in and doing a set of curls to failure. Like, you don't freak out about it. Right? You guys don't freak out about your other lifts. There's no psych up. There's no fear of failure. You don't have that deep sense of dread. You also don't have to get extremely excited, right? You don't have to just scream and yell to do your normal work, do you? Why? In theory, you should. If you needed to max out, you should need to do a set of curls to failure. But people don't. Why? Because the guys who do curls to failure every week. Probably multiple sets. Okay? It's not a big deal. When you max, it's the exact same way. It just becomes normal everyday training. Right? It's just not a big deal. And people can't grasp that who don't understand it. Even a lot of coaches out there, really good coaches, are like, no, it's dangerous. It's risky. Oh, why would you do that? And people who do it just laugh at them. They laugh at them because it really isn't. It really isn't a big deal. That's the point. It also makes you confident under the bar. You know when you max on a dozen different lifts regularly, you know what you're capable of. You know how to strain. You can get in and strain without taking a pre-workout or slapping yourself or screaming. You just get under the bar and you push hard and you maintain form and tightness, right? It just isn't a big deal anymore. And that's where you want to be with it. You want to get good at lifting heavy. That's where you want to be. And it makes it safe. It makes it a lot safer because you're calm and collect and you're thinking through what you're doing. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.